Your morning will return on Friday. This is a Wednesday, the 22nd day of November, 2023. We are going to spend the following 45 minutes hearing the events of this date 60 years ago, the assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. I want to begin this hour with bringing you the sounds of a newscast from NBC Radio that aired at this hour 60 years ago today.
NBC Radio News on the Hour, brought to you by Bayer Aspirin for fast relief from headache, muscular pains, or fever of a cold. Now here is Russ Ward, NBC News.
President Kennedy, in his second day of speechmaking in Texas, is defending the TFX warplane as a powerful force of freedom. We'll have a report from Texas coming up. South Vietnam's Revolutionary Council has dismissed 31 high-ranking military officers for an indefinite period while investigations are made into their activities during the Diem regime. French officials are quoted today as saying the de Gaulle government would give sympathetic consideration to economic and military aid for Cambodia. Cambodian Prince Norodom Sihanouk reportedly has said France is the most capable power to represent the Western world in that part of Asia. There has been no official request for help, however. 9 South Koreans have been killed and 9 others injured as they were gathering scrap metal on a U.S. firing range north of Seoul. The victims died when an Honest John rocket landed in the area. An Army spokesman said the South Koreans had been warned of danger on the firing range, that they were trespassing when the tragedy occurred. By a margin of more than 100 to 1, delegates to the Roman Catholic Ecumenical Council have given final approval to the use of modern languages instead of Latin in most forms of church worship. This is the first definitive action by the Council. That report on the President and other news after this from Bayer Aspirin.
Did you know that the average American has 3 or more colds a year? If you should come down with the pains or fever of a cold or flu during this cold and flu season, remember this. To feel better fast, Bayer Aspirin is the kind of pain reliever doctors recommend. Reporting on a government-financed study of 5 leading pain relievers, an article in the Journal of the American Medical Association showed that Bayer Aspirin was unsurpassed by any of them for speed and strength of relief. The report also showed that Bayer Aspirin was as gentle to the stomach as any product tested, including the higher-priced Buffered product. On the other hand, the 2 combination of ingredients products tested upset the stomach considerably more often. So for fast, strong relief from the pains and fever of a cold or flu, and especially if certain combination of ingredients products upset your stomach, try Bayer Aspirin.
For your youngsters, get Bayer Aspirin for children with its new orange flavor.
Here again, Russ Ward.
President Kennedy has opened the second day of his political swing through Texas. The story from NBC's Robert McNeil with the presidential party in Fort Worth.
President Kennedy is beginning the day with a defense of the controversial TFX fighter plane. He's telling a breakfast audience in Fort Worth right now that there's been a good deal of discussion of the competition to win the TFX contract, but relatively little discussion of what this revolutionary plane will do. The president has also just spoken to a crowd of several thousand standing outside in the rain. He's now preparing to move on to Dallas for a major lunchtime speech on the theme of American strength. Police in Dallas have mounted the biggest security operation in their history to prevent any repetition of the demonstrations which marked the visit of UN Ambassador Adlai Stevenson last month. Although Texas newspapers are much preoccupied with Democratic Party feuding behind the glamour of the occasion, it has not detracted from the Kennedys' popular success. Robert McNeil, NBC News, with the presidential party in Fort Worth.
French President de Gaulle and West Germany's new Chancellor Erhard have ended 2 days of talks in Paris with a reaffirmation of the French-West German Treaty of Cooperation signed last January. The 2 men called for, quote, all necessary efforts to solve the problems of the European common market. No progress was reported on questions of nuclear defense for Western Europe. Today, incidentally, is the 73rd birthday of President de Gaulle. He has asked that there be no public ceremony. Another birthday of note, John Nance Garner, 95 today. He's being honored in his hometown of Uvalde, Texas, with a farm and ranch show. Russ Ward, NBC News, Washington.
It is against that backdrop that we will take you next to a feature presentation of this hour, if you will. This is Your Morning, our special holiday edition, and we are going to bring you a radio documentary in just a moment after I give our thanks to our friends at Sahara Motors on the Miguel Highway, about a mile north of US 93. And they want to take just a moment to thank you for your patronage over the last year and hope that you will stop by, make sure your car gets serviced for the holiday, and make sure that you are going to be safe this year, because that's important. Making sure your car is safe for the upcoming winter months. And if you need a problem, tell them that we sent you by. 775-289-4473. I also want to thank our friends over at Subway. You can go in right now for breakfast or until dinner, till 8 o'clock tonight. Use their drive-through kiosk, drive through, and eat fresh using their Subway Series menu. They have so many great things on that menu. Try something new today, and you don't even have to get out of your car. What's an easier way to get your Subway? Eat fresh, and don't even get out of your car. Now, a 30-minute audio documentary that was, this was originally broadcast in November of 1985. We want to thank longtime voiceover talent Mike Swicky, who has done lots of stuff. He also, to tell you a little bit about him, he was known as Mike Donovan on the air. He was a broadcaster, storm chaser. He won Emmy Awards for news coverage at WKY and KTVY television in Oklahoma City. And I want you to hear this documentary, The Assassination of President Kennedy, a radio documentary. It has been heard around the world, and I want you to hear this. This was originally broadcast, as you said, in 1985. So this broadcast will be dating things as if they occurred. That would have been the 22nd anniversary of the assassination. Let's take a moment to listen to this, because if we, and yet I do not believe, and that's one of the things that you will find this radio station believes, and I believe most conservatives believe. If we do not remember and learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. Unlike people of another political persuasion who believe that all history has to be erased. We do not believe that, and we will never believe that. Let's listen to this fascinating and well-written documentary on the assassination of President Kennedy by Mike Swicky.
The President's car is now turning onto Elm Street, and it will be only a matter of minutes before he arrives at the trademark. I was on Simmons Freeway earlier, and even the freeway was jam-packed with spectators waiting their chance to see the President as he made his way toward the trademark.
3 girls and I were walking to our English class at Rogers High School in Tulsa. We heard over the PA system that Kennedy had been shot. We immediately went to the office to find out if it was really true, and at first everybody thought it was a joke. And then they turned on the televisions in the classrooms, and we found out that he really had been shot. Everybody was in tears.
It appears as though something has happened in the motorcade route. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route. There's numerous people running up the hill alongside Elm Street, there by the Simmons Freeway. Several police officers are rushing up the hill at this time. Stand by just a moment, please. Something has happened in the motorcade route. Stand by, please.
It was around noontime. We were sitting there in the workshop there eating our dinner, and they broke in and said that in Dallas, Texas, the president had been shot, but they didn't say whether he'd been killed or not. They just said he was being rushed to the hospital, and they'd have a bulletin later on, you know.
Parkland Hospital, there has been a shooting. Parkland Hospital has been advised to stand by for a severe gunshot wound. I repeat, a shooting in the motorcade in the downtown area. Parkland Hospital has been advised to stand by for a severe gunshot wound.
I was listening to the television while I ironed, sort of watching it, and the program was interrupted, and we had the news First of all, that the president had been shot, and then a short time thereafter that the president was dead.
The president's car is now going past me. The limousine is now traveling at a very high rate of speed. Secret Service men standing up in the limousine. They are armed with submachine guns. It appears as though someone in the limousine might have been hit by the gunfire.
12:30 p.m., Friday, November 22nd, 1963. President John Fitzgerald Kennedy assassinated as he was leaving downtown Dallas on his way to a noon luncheon. It has been 22 years since that tragic Friday afternoon in Dallas, yet for millions of Americans it seems like only yesterday. An event of such magnitude that anyone alive and old enough to remember can tell you exactly where they were and what they were doing when the news of the shooting was first reported. John Kennedy was elected president in 1960 by the slimmest of margins, defeating then Vice President Richard Nixon. On that cold, sunny day that John F. Kennedy became the 35th President of the United States, America and indeed the world watched as this youngest president ever was inaugurated on the steps of the U.S. Capitol and delivered an inaugural address that stirred all who listened.
Let the word go forth from this time and place to friend and foe alike that the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century, tempered by war, disciplined by a hard and bitter peace, proud of our ancient heritage, and unwilling to witness or permit the slow undoing of those human rights to which this nation has always been committed and to which we are committed today at home and around the world.
The presidency of John Kennedy is widely viewed by historians to have been one that forever changed the office, one that was as much lauded for style as for substance. During his nearly 3 years as president, Kennedy faced many challenges at home and abroad, from questions of steel prices and civil rights in this country to Berlin and missiles in Cuba. His was an active presidency, one that was always challenging Americans to greatness and extolling the virtues of Western freedoms. The decision to travel to Texas in November of 1963 was made after several prominent Texas politicians pleaded with the president to visit their state to bolster chances for the Democrats in the '64 elections. Kennedy, looking forward to his re-election campaign a year away, agreed. The itinerary for the presidential trip would take Kennedy to San Antonio, Houston, Fort Worth, Dallas, and Austin on November 21st and 22nd. The president was accompanied on the trip by his lovely wife, Jacqueline, affectionately known to millions as simply Jackie. The crowds that greeted the Kennedys in Texas were enormous. After successful events in Houston and San Antonio on Thursday, the 21st, a big day was planned for Friday, the 22nd. The morning of November 22nd began with an early morning rally outside his hotel in Fort Worth. A misty rain was falling, but 5,000 people stood in the rain to see their president. Another audience awaited the president inside, as 2,500 guests had gathered in the hotel for a Chamber of Commerce breakfast. The president seemed pleased with his reception and was in a particularly spirited and jovial mood, having fun with Jackie's presence on the trip.
2 years ago, I said that, introduced myself in Paris by saying that I was the man who had accompanied Mrs. Kennedy to Paris. I'm getting that same sensation as I travel around Texas.
The plan called for a quick plane trip to Dallas following the Fort Worth breakfast, and then a parade through downtown Dallas that would take the president to the Trade Mart to deliver a noon-hour speech. Air Force One arrived at Love Field in Dallas at 11:37 a.m. Before the motorcade began, the president asked that the bubble top be removed from his limousine since it was no longer raining. At 11:50 a.m., the motorcade, with police sirens wailing, pulled out of Love Field. Traveling with President and Mrs. Kennedy in the presidential limousine was Texas Governor and Mrs. John Connally. The crowds that lined the streets were small for the first few miles, but as the motorcade entered downtown Dallas, throngs of people greeted the presidential party, many with homemade signs welcoming the Kennedys to Dallas. As the motorcade approached the edge of downtown Dallas and turned onto Houston Street, a large sign atop the Texas School Book Depository building flashed the time, 12:30 p.m. The turn from Houston onto Elm Street was a sharp, almost U-turn.
The President's car is now turning onto Elm Street, and it will be only a matter of minutes before he arrives at the Trade Mart. I was on Stemmons Freeway earlier, and even the freeway was jam-packed with spectators waiting their chance to see the President as he made his way toward the Trade Mart. It appears as though something has happened in the motorcade route. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route. There's numerous people running up the hill alongside Elm Street, there by the Stemmons Freeway. Several police officers are rushing up the hill at this time. Stand by just a moment, please. Something has happened in the motorcade route. Stand by, please. Parkland Hospital, there has been a shooting. Parkland Hospital has been advised to stand by for a severe gunshot wound. I repeat, a shooting in the motorcade in the downtown area. Parkland Hospital has been advised to stand by for a severe gunshot wound. The President's car is now going past me. The limousine is now traveling at a very high rate of speed. Secret Service men standing up in the limousine. They are armed with submachine guns. It appears as though someone in the limousine might have been hit by the gunfire.
Repeating this bulletin received at WQMR from the United Press. A sniper has fired at President Kennedy.
Just a few minutes ago, the President of the United States turned from Houston Street onto Elm Street on his way to a scheduled luncheon appearance at the Stemmons Trade Mart. As the President turned, applause broke out from a sparse crowd on both sides of the street, and as he went by the Texas School Book Depository, headed for the Triple Underpass, there were three loud, reverberating explosions. Nobody moved. Everyone seemed stunned. A few seemed to look around, wondering who has the firecrackers. Then suddenly the Secret Service men sprang into action. The convertible bearing the President and Mrs. Kennedy sped away, and officers, both plainclothes and uniformed, seemed to spring from everywhere at once, guns drawn, ordering people to lie flat. There are two witnesses who were near the President's car at the time of the explosions who say that shots were fired from which upper window we do not know. We do not and cannot confirm the reports at this time that the President has been shot. One witness says he definitely was shot, that he was hit twice, that he saw the President slump in his seat. As I say, this is not confirmed at this time. From where I am, the police have two witnesses. They are bringing them in now. I'm in the Texas School Book Depository building. They're bringing some witnesses in now. We will try to learn further and relay word to the station. Stay tuned for further details. This is Pierce Allman from the Texas School Book Depository building for WFAA News.
In just 6 short seconds, the course of history was altered. The President was shot. Texas Governor John Connally also lie wounded in the presidential limousine. Secret Service agents scrambled as Agent William Greer slammed the accelerator and sped off to Parkland Hospital. The President's wife cradled his head in her lap during the trip to Parkland. At the scene of the shooting, Dallas police officers sprung into action. At the moment the shots rang out, many people ran up a grassy incline along Elm Street, now known as the Grassy Knoll, thinking this is where the shots came from. Some even reported seeing smoke rising from behind a picket fence that ran atop the hill. Officers searched a railway yard behind this fence, while others began a search of the Texas School Book Building. Some claimed to have seen a man shooting from this building, and based on these eyewitness reports, the Dallas police radioed out this description of a suspect.
Attention all squad. Attention all squad. The suspect in the shooting at Elm in Houston is reported to be an unknown white male, approximately 30, slender build, height 5 feet 10 inches, weight 165 pounds, reported to be armed with what is thought to be a .30 caliber rifle. Attention all squads, the suspect from Elm in Houston is reported to be an unknown white male, about 30, slender build, 5 feet 10 inches tall, 165 pounds, armed with what is thought to be a .30 rifle. No further description at this time or information. 1245 KKB 360.
At approximately 12:50 p.m., with the President and Governor Connally's fate still unknown, Officer J.M. Cheney provides listeners of Dallas radio station KLIF with the first eyewitness account of the shooting.
Well, the first shot we thought was a motorcycle backfiring, and then I looked to my left and so did President Kennedy, looking back over his left shoulder. And when the second shot struck him in the face, then we knew that someone was shooting at the president.
Moments later, another eyewitness to the shooting, Charles Brim, described what he saw.
I had told my 5-year-old boy to wave at him, and as he was waving, the president was looking toward us when the first shot rang out, and he slumped down in his seat. I didn't know for sure. I was positive it was a rifle shot, and that it was no joke that he had slumped down. And while I was still trying to make up my mind in a second or two as to what had happened, the second shot rang out. After the first one, his wife knew that he was hit. She reached toward him as he slumped down. I am positive I saw 2 violent reactions from him as the result of the 2 shots. There was a third shot, but by that time I had grabbed the boy and run, and the motorcade had speeded up and moved out of the area. As I say, I had the unfortunate experience of looking into the man's face when he was shot.
1:20 p.m. A frantic plea for help from a citizen using a police radio. He had found an officer shot in the Oak Cliff section of Dallas.
Hello, police operator. Go ahead. Go ahead, citizen using his police. Hello, we've had a shooting out here. Where is it at? The citizen using police radio. What location? Between Marsalis and Buckley. It's a police officer. Somebody shot him. What's it? 404 10th Street. 78. It's in a police car. Number 10. Number 10. 78. 78.
The shooting of Dallas police officer J.D. Tippit was soon to become known to everyone as a part of the puzzle of this tragic day, as the man police were soon to arrest for this shooting was also to become the prime suspect in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. At 1:20 p.m., while searching the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository building, Dallas police found a rifle stuffed between some boxes near an open window in the southeast corner with an excellent view of Elm Street below. First reports identified the weapon as a Mauser. Later, officials said the rifle was an Italian Mannlicher Carcano, a cheap but not inefficient gun. At 1:35 p.m., KLIF radio was covering the unfolding events when the shocking news came.
The extent of the injuries to Governor Connally is a closely shrouded secret at the moment.
President Kennedy is dead, Gordon.
Ladies and
this
gentlemen,
is official word.
The president is dead. The president, ladies and gentlemen, is dead.
John Fitzgerald Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, was dead. Texas Governor John Connally was seriously wounded. The official announcement from Parkland Hospital made by presidential aide Malcolm Kilduff said simply that the president died at approximately 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. The new president was to be Lyndon Baines Johnson. America, in shock, ground to a halt. Schools were closed. Offices and assembly lines shut down. The world looked to Dallas horrified at the fact that this young, vibrant president was murdered. At approximately 1:45 p.m., Dallas police were notified that a suspect in the shooting of J.D. Tippit had entered the Texas Theater. The movie playing at the time, War is Hell. But real drama would unfold inside the theater this day. As Dallas police entered the theater, the projectionist stopped the film, turned up the house lights. A young man jumped up screaming, "This is it." Patrolman M.N. McDonald scuffled with the man and soon had him in handcuffs. The suspect was identified as one Lee Harvey Oswald. Oswald almost immediately was the suspect in the killing of the president. Police determined he was an employee of the Texas School Book Depository, from which witnesses said they saw a man shooting, and Oswald fit the general description. At about the same time police were arresting Oswald, Lyndon Johnson was being given the oath of office aboard Air Force One as the 36th President of the United States. The only recording made of this historic event was on a secretary's small dictation machine.
I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will to the best of my ability preserve, protect, defend the Constitution of the United States. So help me God.
The new president immediately returned to Washington as investigators worried about the possibilities of a conspiracy to kill both men. Meanwhile, in Dallas, Lee Harvey Oswald was now the only suspect in the assassination of President Kennedy. In Dallas on the night of the assassination, police officers permitted Oswald to speak to reporters at a chaotic press conference in a crowded room at the city jail.
I was questioned by a judge. However, I protested at that time that I was not allowed legal representation during that very short and sweet hearing. I really don't know what the situation is about. Nobody has told me anything except that I'm accused of murdering a policeman. I know nothing more than that. I do request someone to come forward to give me legal assistance.
You killed the president?
No, I've not been charged with that. In fact, nobody has said that to me yet. The first thing I heard about it was when the newspaper reporters in the hall asked me that question.
Shortly after Oswald's session with reporters, Peace Justice David Johnson reads the formal charges against Lee Harvey Oswald.
This is in the name of and by the authority of the state of Texas, personally appeared before me, the undersigned authority of this affiant, who after being by me duly sworn, disposes and says your affiant has good reason to believe, and does believe that one Lee Harvey Oswald, hereinafter styled defendant, heretofore on or about the 22nd day of November, A.D. 1963, in the county of Dallas and state of Texas, did then and there, unlawfully, voluntarily, and with malice aforethought, kill John F. Kennedy by shooting him with a gun. That is attested as the affiant J.W. Fritz, against the peace and dignity of the state of Texas, sworn to and subscribed before me this 22nd day of November 1963, Henry Wade, Criminal District Attorney, Dallas County, Texas. And this instrument was then passed to me at 11:26 p.m. and filed as cause number F154 in the Justice Court Precinct 2 of Dallas County and is attested by myself.
Early on the morning of November 23rd, Dallas Police Chief Jesse Curry tells of evidence against Oswald.
The fact that he was on the floor where the shots were fired from immediately before the shots were fired, the fact that he was seen carrying a package through the building, the fact that...
when was he carrying that package? The same day?
Yesterday morning.
You figure that was a disassembled rifle?
I don't think it was disassembled. The package was large enough for the rifle to be intact. It was wrapped in paper.
When you have the witness who places him there after the time of the shooting?
My police officer can place him there at the time of the shooting.
Chief, do you have any concern for the safety of your prisoner in view of the high feeling among the people of Dallas over the assassination of the president?
No, but necessary precautions will be taken, of course, but I'm not, I don't think that the people will try to take the prisoner away from us.
Sunday morning, November 24th, the nation, still numbed by the events in Dallas, watched on television as the president's coffin was carried on a caisson drawn by 6 matching grays, with the 3 on the right riderless. To the sound of muffled drums and bagpipes, the procession ended at the United States Capitol. At precisely the same hour, Dallas police officials were underway with the transfer of Lee Harvey Oswald from the city jail to the county jail. As the television networks cut away from the ceremonies in Washington to cover the transfer of the prisoner in Dallas, another shocking event was to unfold on live television in the living rooms of millions of Americans.
Now the prisoner wearing a black sweater, he has changed from his T-shirt, is being moved out toward an armored car, being led out by Captain Fritz. There is the prisoner. Do you have anything to say in your defense? There's a shot. Oswald has been shot. Oswald has been shot. A shot rang out. Mass confusion here. Holy mackerel. There's a mass confusion there. Rolling and fighting. As he was being let out, now he's being led back. He was thrown to the ground. The police have the entire area blocked off. Did you see it? What happened?
Yeah, I saw the guy. There's a man, a rather stocky man with a hat on, a dark...
stocky man with a hat on?
He rushed, he crushed, and he shot him there, and I saw the flash, and Oswald said, oh, and that's it.
My statement will be very brief. Now,
Lee Harvey Oswald, now himself the victim of violence, was shot by a Dallas nightclub operator named Jack Rubenstein, known as Jack Ruby. Ruby claimed he shot Oswald in order to spare Mrs. Kennedy from having to testify at an Oswald trial. With Oswald dead, questions concerning the assassination of President Kennedy were everywhere. Was Oswald working alone? Was there a foreign conspiracy, a domestic conspiracy to kill the president? Before the questions could begin to be answered, the nation had to lay their president to rest. Monday, November 25th, again millions of Americans found themselves before their television sets, watching the funeral of their late president. On November 29, 1963, President Lyndon Johnson signed Executive Order Number 11130, creating a presidential commission to investigate the assassination of President Kennedy. With Chief Justice Earl Warren as chairman, it was soon to become known as the Warren Commission. The commission was directed to evaluate all the facts of the assassination and the subsequent killing of the alleged assassin and report its findings and conclusions to the president. Over the course of its 10-month investigation, the Warren Commission took testimony of 552 witnesses, while the FBI and the Secret Service interviewed 26,550 persons. The final report of the Warren Commission was submitted to President Johnson on September 24, 1964. The testimony and exhibits filled 27 volumes. The Commission's findings in the so-called Warren Report was that Lee Harvey Oswald fired 3 shots from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository building, wounding Governor John Connally and killing President John Kennedy, and that Oswald acted alone and was not involved in any conspiracy, foreign or domestic. The commission also concluded that Jack Ruby killed Lee Harvey Oswald, again as a lone killer, and was not related in any way to a conspiracy to kill the president. One member of the commission was then House Republican Minority Leader and later President Gerald Ford, who stated his belief in the integrity and conclusions of the Warren Commission.
Problem that we had of determining who committed the assassination and sought to get the answers from all of the evidence that we could find. We did not enter into our responsibilities with any predetermined conclusions. We had an assignment to get the facts and to come up with conclusions as to the person or persons who committed the assassination. A tremendous number of witnesses were interviewed, depositions were taken by the staff. The net result was, in my judgment, the commission performed its function in a constructive, thorough, and objective manner.
For years after the assassination, dozens of books critical of the findings of the Warren Report were published. The controversy over the killing continued. 13 years after the assassination, in September of 1976, public pressure forced Congress to establish a special House Select Committee to investigate assassinations. House Resolution 1540 authorized a complete investigation into the deaths of President Kennedy and Dr. Martin Luther King. The 2.5-year, $5.5 million investigation concluded that, quote, "It is probable that the president was assassinated as a result of a conspiracy," unquote. Many questions remain. Who was Lee Harvey Oswald? Did he have connections, as many suspect, with U.S. intelligence agencies? Was there an involvement among organized crime figures, as the House Select Committee investigation hinted at? What about the role of Cuban exiles angry at Kennedy for his perceived lack of commitment to the disastrous Bay of Pigs invasion? And what about Jack Ruby? Was there more to his killing of Oswald than his claim of wanting to spare Jackie Kennedy the agony of going through a trial? An interesting interview with Jack Ruby just before his death is still as mysterious now as it was then. The interview was crudely recorded, but very puzzling.
The only thing I can say, what is your name, and I'll know how to do it. Harry Kendall. Harry Kendall. Everything pertaining to what's happening has never come to the surface. The world will never know the true facts of what occurred, my motives. In
other words, I'm the only person in the background that knows the truth pertaining to everything relating to my circumstances.
Do you think it'll ever come out?
No, because unfortunately, the people that have so much to gain and have such a material motive to put me in a position I'm in will never let the true facts come above boards to the world.
Now, these people are in very high positions yet?
Yes.
There is the possibility we will never know the full story of the crime of the century, but the who's and why's of that tragic day are overshadowed by the history of what happened. A young president in the prime of his life, senselessly murdered in a cowardly act of violence that stunned the world and altered the course of history. And the violence continued. 5 years after the assassination of President Kennedy, black civil rights leader Martin Luther King was gunned down in Memphis, Tennessee. And then in June of 1968, another Kennedy became a victim of political assassination.
Mayor Yorty has just sent me a message that we've been here too long already. So, my thanks to all of you, and now it's on to Chicago, and let's win there. Thank you.
Senator Kennedy has been shot. Is that possible? Is that possible? Is it possible, ladies and gentlemen? It is possible. He has not only Senator Kennedy. Oh my God! Senator Kennedy has been shot.
Later, in the 1970s, President Gerald Ford became the target of 2 assassination attempts. And in March of 1981, John Hinckley waited outside the Washington Hilton Hotel, and as President Reagan was leaving the hotel, fired shots hitting President Reagan in the chest, seriously wounding a Secret Service agent, a Washington, D.C. policeman, and the presidential press secretary. In these years since the assassination of President Kennedy in Dallas, the memory of the 35th president is still fresh in the hearts and minds of millions of Americans. His voice can still be heard pleading for the civil rights of all Americans, standing toe-to-toe with the Soviet Union over missiles in Cuba, or delivering a most memorable speech to a huge crowd in Berlin. We can only hope and pray that the political violence that felled this young president will never happen again. But as Bobby Kennedy said shortly before he himself was killed, no one knows who next will suffer from some senseless act of bloodshed.
The President's car is now turning onto Elm Street, and it will be only a matter of minutes before he arrives at the trademark.
As the president turned, applause broke out from a sparse crowd on both sides of the street. And as he went by the Texas School Book Depository, headed for the Triple Underpass, there were 3 loud, reverberating explosions.
President Kennedy is dead, Gordon.
Ladies and
this
gentlemen,
is official
the
word.
The president is dead. The president, ladies and gentlemen, is dead.
Without any doubt, he's the killer. The law says beyond a reasonable doubt and to a moral certainty, which there's no question that he was the killer of President Kennedy.
There's a shot. Oswald has been shot. Oswald has been shot.
I will do my best. That is all I can do.
From November 1985, Mike Schwicky's documentary of the assassination of President John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Let's turn to the night of November 22nd, 1963. I don't care what anybody says. The true voice of America was not Walter Cronkite. It was Paul Harvey. Let's hear what was said over ABC that night 60 years ago.
Good evening, Americans. We are just never ready for this kind of thing in this country. We deplore the hotheads elsewhere in the world who change governments with guns, but we try to ignore the fact that now 4 of our own presidents have been cut down by assassins. It had been such a tremendous welcome at the Dallas airport and all along the parade route that Mrs. Kennedy, who had become perhaps his greatest political asset, turned to her husband and said, "You can't say Dallas wasn't friendly to you." Moments later, in the back seat of that open car, she cradled her husband's bleeding head in her arms, saying, "Oh no, oh no." Top speed, it was still 5 minutes to Parkland Hospital. Mrs. Kennedy did not collapse, no hysteria. When she entered the hospital, her chic fuchsia suit was covered with her husband's blood. President Kennedy, within 30 minutes, was dead from a bullet in his brain. There was another wound in the president's neck, which could have been from the same bullet. Mrs. Kennedy's wish was to return to Washington immediately to be with the children. The bullets, by now you know, came from a warehouse window. On the 5th floor, police found the remains of some fried chicken and some paper. The assassin had waited there for some time. And a Mauser rifle with a scope sight. 3 cartridges fired, 1 still in the chamber. Dallas policemen advised that a suspect had entered a theater in the Riverside section, chased him there. There was a shootout. 1 policeman was killed. The suspect was captured, Lee H. Oswald, at 24. They dragged him from the theater screaming. Evidence is piling up against him. He was employed in the building where the murder weapon was found. Lee H. Oswald traveled in Russia in 1959, married a Russian woman, renounced his American citizenship, tried to apply for Russian citizenship. And it's significant, killed by extreme right-wing elements. Now it develops the assassin's allegiance was red. He wore a brown shirt, uniform of a Castro-communist terrorist, and he, Lee Oswald, is chairman of the pro-Castro outfit called the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. Governor Connolly, with a bullet through his back that came out his chest, fractured his wrist, underwent surgery. He is conscious, condition good. Vice President Johnson, who was riding in a separate car a considerable distance behind Kennedy's, was unhurt. Lyndon Johnson is now President of the United States. Within less than 2 hours of the president's death, aboard the presidential plane in Dallas, Johnson took the oath of office sworn in by a woman judge and then took off with the widow and the body for Washington. When the first news came today, before it was even confirmed that the president had been killed, a flood of sell orders hit the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. They rang the bell, closed down for the day, but before they could, industrials had plummeted $21. And the commodity exchanges closed down, and Congress recessed, and sporting events most everywhere scheduled for tonight are canceled. Pope Paul, advised, went to his private chapel to pray. General Douglas MacArthur, in a telegram to Mrs. Kennedy tonight, said, quote, "I realize the utter futility of words at such a time, but as a former comrade in arms, his death kills something within me." The president's special car has a bulletproof bubble glass top, but the top was down today so that he could wave to the enthusiastic crowds. The Dallas reception was the most enthusiastic of any stop in Texas. For weeks, a big debate raged over who of the city's luminaries would get to sit at the head table this noon. Nobody did. And on the president's White House desk tonight are the calls and the callers and the documents and the urgent things to be done which could not possibly await his attention for another day. But they will wait now. It is for us that one must grieve tonight. For a generation which has so refined its intellect that it can split atoms and communicate with the moon, and yet remains at the mercy of its own undisciplined emotions. If the world is one day destroyed, it'll come just like this, you know. It'll not be the H-bomb that did it. It'll be the greed or the fear or the hate that set it off. Paul Harvey. Good night. ABC, Chicago.
Let us pray that we do not change presidents again through the bullet box, but that we continue to change our administrations through the ballot box. Mike Slater and Bill O'Reilly next. Thank you for tuning in to the Nevada Talk Network. Have a great day, won't you please? And remember,